Your soulmate is thinking this. Check your phone now. Right now, I don't know what you're doing, or where you are, or what kind of thoughts are running through your mind, but somehow, in the middle of everything, I felt this strong urge to reach out to you, like my soul just whispered your name without asking for permission. It's strange how this connection works, isn't it? We don't talk all the time, we don't always show what we feel, and yet there's something so real, so intense, so quietly powerful between us that refuses to fade no matter how much distance, silence, or reality tries to come in between. I don't even know how to explain it properly, because every time I try, words feel too small for what I feel for you. It's like trying to hold the ocean in your hands. It slips through, but you still feel its depth. There are moments when I sit alone, doing absolutely nothing, and out of nowhere, you cross my mind like a sudden wave that doesn't ask for permission before crashing into my thoughts. And in those moments, everything else becomes background noise. I start wondering if you ever feel the same. If there are seconds in your day when your heart pauses just a little longer than usual, as if it's remembering something, or someone, it shouldn't forget. Maybe you don't even realize it, maybe you brush it off as just another random thought, but I feel it deeply, like there's an invisible thread tying my emotions to yours in ways neither of us can fully understand. I won't lie to you. This connection scares me sometimes. Not because it feels wrong, but because it feels too right in a world where things are rarely that simple. There's a certain kind of honesty in what I feel for you that I don't even show to myself fully, because once I admit how deep this goes, there's no going back. It's not just a passing feeling, not just a temporary attachment. It's something that has quietly rooted itself inside me, growing without asking for permission, becoming a part of who I am without making a sound. And the hardest part is, I don't even know if I'm allowed to feel this way. I try to be rational about it. I remind myself of reality, of boundaries, of everything that says this shouldn't be as intense as it is. I tell myself to step back, to breathe, to not let my heart run ahead of what life has actually given us. But emotions don't follow logic, do they? They don't ask for approval, they don't wait for the right timing, and they definitely don't care about what's convenient. They just exist. And you exist in my heart in a way that logic has never been able to touch. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if things were different. If we had met at another time, in another life, in another version of reality where everything aligned perfectly. Would we have been simpler then? Easier? Would we have laughed without holding back, talked without hesitation, stayed without thinking about consequences? Or would this same depth still exist? This same intensity, this same feeling that somehow feels both like home and like something forbidden at the same time? I don't know the answer, and maybe I never will. But what I do know is this: you matter to me in ways I don't always show. You're present in my silences, in my pauses, in the small moments when I stare at nothing and somehow end up thinking about everything that connects me to you. It's in the songs I don't skip, in the words I don't say, in the thoughts I keep to myself because they feel too fragile to be spoken out loud. You're there in all of it, quietly existing in the background of my life like a constant I never asked for, but somehow needed. And I know things aren't simple. I know there are realities we can't ignore, responsibilities we can't just walk away from, lines we shouldn't cross no matter how strong the pull feels. I respect that. I respect you. And maybe that's why I stay silent sometimes, why I don't always say everything that's on my mind, why I choose distance even when every part of me wants closeness. Because caring for you doesn't just mean wanting you, it means protecting what's right, even if it costs me something. Still, there are nights when everything feels louder than usual. When the silence isn't peaceful, but heavy. When I catch myself wondering if you're thinking about me too, if you ever feel this invisible connection tugging at your heart when you least expect it. And in those moments, I don't try to fight it anymore. I just sit with it. I let myself feel everything I've been holding back, every unspoken word, every hidden emotion, every piece of you that somehow became a part of me without permission. You don't even have to say anything. You don't have to acknowledge this, or respond to it, or even understand it fully. Because some connections aren't meant to be explained, they're just meant to be felt. And what I feel for you, it's real, even in its silence, even in its distance, even in its impossibility. It's real in the way my heart recognizes you without needing proof, in the way my thoughts return to you without effort, in the way your presence lingers even when you're not physically here. Maybe in another life, things would have been different. Maybe we would have had a story that didn't require so much restraint, so much patience, so much unspoken understanding. But in this life, this is what we have, and somehow, even this feels meaningful. Even this feels like something rare, something not everyone gets to experience. Because not everyone meets someone who changes them without even trying, who becomes a quiet part of their soul without making a scene. So if you ever feel something you can't explain, if you ever find yourself pausing for no reason, thinking of someone without knowing why, maybe, just maybe, it's me. Maybe it's this connection, reaching across distance and silence, reminding you that somewhere, someone feels you in ways that words could never fully capture. And maybe that's enough. And maybe that's enough, but there are days when enough doesn't feel like enough at all, when this quiet connection starts to ache in ways I don't know how to explain, when I find myself wishing, just for a moment, that life wasn't so complicated, that feelings didn't come with conditions, that hearts didn't have to learn the art of holding back. Because if I'm being honest with you, there are parts of me that don't just feel this connection, they crave it, deeply, in a way that goes beyond logic or control. It's in the way I sometimes imagine what it would feel like to talk to you without any hesitation, without measuring my words, without that invisible wall reminding me where I should stop. It's in the way I think about the conversations we never had, the things we never said, the moments that could have existed if life had been just a little kinder to us. And I know I shouldn't go there, I shouldn't let my mind build something that reality cannot hold, but the heart doesn't ask for permission before it dreams, does it? It just does what it does, quietly, persistently, even when it knows it has to stay within limits. Sometimes I wonder if you sense this distance I create, if you ever notice how I pull myself back just when things start to feel too real, too close, too honest. It's not because I don't care, it's because I care too much, in a way that makes me cautious, in a way that makes me protect not just you, but also the space we exist in. Because what we have, whatever this is, it's fragile. Not in a weak way, but in a way that needs understanding, in a way that could easily break if pushed beyond what it's meant to be. And I would rather hold on to this quietly than lose it completely trying to turn it into something it's not allowed to become. But that doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean I don't feel that pull, that constant, silent gravity that keeps bringing me back to you no matter how much I try to focus on everything else. You've become a part of my inner world in a way I didn't expect, in a way I didn't plan, and now I carry you with me in the smallest, most ordinary moments. When something good happens, you're one of the first people I think of. When something feels heavy, your presence crosses my mind like a quiet comfort I can't reach but can still feel. It's strange how someone can feel like home and distance at the same time, how you can feel so close emotionally, yet so far in reality. And maybe that's why this connection feels the way it does. It lives in the in-between, in the space where feelings are real but choices are careful, where emotions are deep but actions are restrained. There's a certain kind of pain in that, a soft, constant ache that doesn't destroy you but never fully leaves either. It just stays, reminding you that something meaningful exists, even if it can't fully exist in the way you sometimes wish it could. I've learned to sit with that feeling, to not fight it too much, to not question it every single time it rises, because some things aren't meant to be solved, they're meant to be understood silently. And you are one of those things in my life that I don't try to fix or define anymore. I just feel it, as it is, without forcing it into a shape that would make it easier to explain. Maybe that's what makes it special. Maybe that's why, despite everything, I don't regret feeling this way. Because in a world where so many things are temporary, so many emotions are shallow, so many connections are fleeting, this feels different. This feels like something that stays, even in silence, even in distance, even in the absence of constant communication. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it doesn't demand attention, but it's there, steady, like a quiet heartbeat in the background of everything. And sometimes, I think that's more powerful than anything else. You don't need to be in my life every single moment for me to feel this. You don't need to say anything extraordinary, or do anything special. Just knowing that you exist, that somewhere in this world there's someone I feel this deeply connected to, it changes something inside me. It makes life feel a little less empty, a little more meaningful, even if that meaning comes with its own kind of ache. And I know this might never turn into something more. I know there might never be a moment where everything aligns and we get to explore this connection without holding back. I've accepted that, in my own quiet way. But acceptance doesn't erase feeling, it just teaches you how to carry it without letting it break you. So I carry this, us, whatever we are, in a way that doesn't demand anything from you, in a way that doesn't disrupt your life, in a way that stays respectful of everything that matters. Because if loving you, even in this quiet, unspoken way, means choosing what's right over what's easy, then I'll choose that every single time. Not because it doesn't hurt, but because some feelings are too genuine to be selfish with. And maybe one day, this will all fade into something softer, something lighter, something that doesn't feel as intense as it does right now. Or maybe it won't. Maybe this is one of those rare connections that stay with you, quietly shaping you, quietly reminding you that you once felt something real, something deep, something that didn't need to be fully lived out to be meaningful. And if that's the case, then I'm okay with it. Because not every love story is meant to be loud, not every connection is meant to be seen, not every feeling is meant to be acted upon. Some are just meant to exist, like this one. And maybe that's what makes this even harder to explain, because it's not just about what I feel, it's about everything I choose not to do because of what I feel. It's about the messages I type and then delete, the moments I almost reach out but stop myself at the last second, the times I sit there staring at my phone wondering if I should break this silence just to hear something from you, even if it's small, even if it's nothing special. You have no idea how many times I've wanted to say something simple like, "I was thinking about you," but even that feels too heavy sometimes, like it carries more meaning than it should, like it might reveal something I've been trying so carefully to keep hidden. And it's not because I'm ashamed of what I feel, it's because I respect it too much to let it become something careless or impulsive. Because the truth is, what I feel for you isn't temporary, it isn't random, it isn't something that just appeared and will disappear overnight. It has stayed, quietly, consistently, growing in the background without demanding attention, without forcing itself into the center of everything, but always there, like a constant presence I can't ignore no matter how much I try to focus on everything else in my life. And sometimes I ask myself why you? Why out of all the people in this world, out of all the faces, all the voices, all the possible connections, it had to be you who left this kind of mark on me? Was it the way you understand things without needing too many words? Was it the way your presence feels calm and intense at the same time? Or was it something deeper, something I can't even fully describe, something that goes beyond personality or moments or conversations, something that feels like recognition, like my soul saw something in you and just stayed? And that thought alone scares me sometimes, because how do you move on from something that doesn't feel like it was just a choice? How do you distance yourself from someone who feels like they were never meant to be temporary in your life, even if reality says otherwise? I try to answer these questions, I really do, but I always end up in the same place, acceptance mixed with longing, peace mixed with a quiet kind of ache. Because I've come to realize that not everything we feel is meant to be resolved. Some things are meant to be carried, not fixed. Some connections aren't problems to solve, they're experiences to understand, even if they don't make complete sense. And you are one of those experiences for me. You're not something I can just label and move on from, you're not something I can reduce to a simple explanation or a clear ending. You're a feeling that exists without needing a conclusion, a presence that stays without needing constant interaction, a memory that continues even when nothing new is being created. And maybe that's why I don't force anything anymore. I don't try to make this into something it's not, I don't try to push for closeness when distance is what's right, I don't try to create moments that might complicate things further. Instead, I let it be, as it is, in its own quiet, unspoken form. But don't mistake that for indifference, because it's the opposite of that. It's control. It's choosing restraint over impulse, understanding over desire, respect over selfishness. And that's not easy, not when every part of you sometimes wants to just forget everything and follow what you feel without thinking about the consequences. But I can't do that, not with you. Because you're not just a feeling to me, you're someone I genuinely care about, someone whose life, whose peace, whose reality matters more than my temporary emotional needs. And maybe that's what real connection looks like sometimes. Not possession, not constant closeness, not always being part of each other's everyday life, but caring in a way that doesn't harm, loving in a way that doesn't take away from what already exists. Still, there are nights when this all feels heavier than usual, when the silence stretches a little too long, when the distance feels a little too real, when I catch myself wondering what you're doing, who you're talking to, whether you're happy, whether you ever think about me the way I think about you. And in those moments, I don't try to escape it anymore. I sit with it. I let myself feel it fully, without pretending it's not there, without trying to distract myself immediately. Because denying it doesn't make it disappear, it just buries it deeper. And I've learned that it's better to face it honestly, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it makes me feel vulnerable in ways I'm not used to. Because this connection, as complicated as it is, has also taught me something about myself. It has shown me the depth of what I'm capable of feeling, the kind of loyalty I can have even in silence, the kind of care that doesn't need recognition to exist. It has made me more aware, more patient, more understanding of things I might have ignored before. And for that alone, I can't see it as something negative, even if it comes with its own challenges. Maybe one day, things will change. Maybe our paths will shift, maybe life will take us in completely different directions, maybe this feeling will slowly transform into something softer, something less intense, something easier to carry. Or maybe it won't. Maybe this will remain exactly what it is, a quiet, steady presence in my life that never fully leaves, no matter how much time passes. And if that's the case, I think I'm okay with that now. Because I've stopped expecting this to become something more, and in doing that, I've also found a strange kind of peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from forgetting, but the kind that comes from understanding, from accepting that some things are meaningful even without becoming something bigger. And you are meaningful to me in ways that don't need to be proven or explained. So wherever you are right now, whatever you're doing, whoever you're with, I hope you're okay. I hope you're at peace. I hope life is treating you gently, even in the ways I'll never get to see. And if there's ever a moment when you feel something you can't explain, a thought that lingers a little longer than it should, a feeling that doesn't seem to have a clear reason, maybe it's this. Maybe it's me, somewhere in the background of your world, thinking of you in a way that doesn't need to be spoken to be real. And maybe that's the strangest part of all of this, that even without saying anything, even without crossing any lines, even without turning this into something visible or defined, you've still managed to become one of the most real feelings I've ever experienced, and I don't even know what to do with that sometimes, because where do you place something like this in your life? Where do you keep a connection that doesn't belong to the world but still refuses to leave your heart? How do you carry something so silent yet so intense without letting it take over everything else? And I really try to balance it, to live my life normally, to focus on what's in front of me, to be present where I'm supposed to be present, but then there are these moments, these quiet, unexpected moments when everything slows down and somehow, without warning, my mind drifts back to you again, like it always does. Like it's following a path it has memorized without my permission, and I just sit there for a second, not fighting it anymore, not questioning it too much, just feeling it as it is, because I've realized that resisting it only makes it louder, only makes it more persistent, and maybe acceptance is the only way to make peace with something that was never meant to be controlled in the first place. And the truth is, you've changed something in me, in ways I didn't even notice at first, in ways that revealed themselves slowly, quietly, over time, like a shift in how I see things, how I feel things, how deeply I understand certain emotions now, because before this, I don't think I fully understood what it meant to care about someone in a way that doesn't ask for anything in return, in a way that exists even when there's no guarantee of closeness, no certainty of a future, no clear definition of what this even is, and yet it still feels important, it still feels meaningful. It still feels like something I can't just dismiss or replace or ignore, and maybe that's why I don't try to run from it anymore. Maybe that's why I've stopped asking myself questions that don't have answers, because not everything in life is meant to be figured out. Some things are meant to be felt, even if they don't make sense, even if they don't fit into the structure of what we think life is supposed to look like. And you are one of those things for me, something I feel more than I understand, something that exists more in my heart than in reality, something that doesn't need constant presence to stay alive, and that's what makes it different, that's what makes it something I can't just compare to anything else, because it doesn't follow the usual rules, it doesn't come with clear expectations or outcomes, it just is, in its own quiet, steady way, and I've learned to respect that, to not force it into something it's not, to not let my emotions turn it into something complicated or messy, because the last thing I would ever want is for this to become something that brings you discomfort or confusion, because no matter what I feel, your peace matters more to me than anything else, and maybe that's what real care looks like. Maybe it's not always about being close or being seen or being acknowledged, maybe sometimes it's about staying in the background, quietly wishing the other person happiness, even if that happiness doesn't include you in the way you sometimes wish it did, and that's not easy. It's not something that comes naturally, it takes effort, it takes control, it takes a constant reminder to yourself that not everything you feel needs to be acted upon, that not every emotion needs to be turned into a decision, and I remind myself of that often, especially on days when everything feels heavier, when the distance feels more noticeable, when I catch myself wondering what it would be like if things were different, if circumstances had been kinder, if timing had been on our side, if life had given us a version of reality where this didn't have to be so carefully contained. And those thoughts, they come and go, like waves, sometimes soft, sometimes overwhelming, but I don't let them stay for too long, because I know that getting lost in what could have been only takes me away from what is, and what is something I've learned to accept, something I've made peace with in my own quiet way, even if it still carries a little bit of ache within it, and maybe that ache is not a bad thing. Maybe it's just a reminder that something real exists, something that touched me deeply enough to leave a mark, something that didn't need a full story to be meaningful, and I think there's a certain kind of beauty in that, in knowing that not everything has to be loud or visible to matter, that not every connection needs to be turned into a relationship to be significant, that some things are complete even in their incompleteness, and you are one of those things in my life. Something that feels complete in a way I can't explain, even though it doesn't fit into any defined role, even though it doesn't have a clear beginning or an obvious ending, it just exists, quietly, consistently, like a presence that doesn't demand attention but is always there if I pause long enough to feel it, and I think I've reached a point where I don't need more than that, where I don't need constant interaction or reassurance or clarity, because what I feel is already clear to me, even if it remains unspoken, even if it stays hidden behind normal conversations and everyday life, and maybe that's how it's meant to be. Maybe this connection was never meant to be something we live out fully, maybe it was meant to teach, to shape, to quietly change something within us without disrupting everything around us, and if that's the case, then I accept it, fully, without resistance, without regret, because not every meaningful thing in life is meant to stay forever in the way we expect it to. Some things stay in a different way, in a quieter way. In a way that becomes a part of you rather than a part of your external life, and that's what you've become for me, a part of my inner world, a thought that feels familiar, a presence that feels constant, a feeling that doesn't fade even when everything else keeps moving forward. And I don't know if you'll ever fully understand this, I don't know if you'll ever feel it the same way, and that's okay, because this was never about needing something back. It was never about creating something equal, or balanced or defined. It was simply about feeling something real, something honest, something that didn't need permission to exist. And if all of this stays within me, unspoken, untouched, quietly carried through time, then so be it, because some things are not meant to be shared with the world, some things are meant to be kept safe within the heart, protected from everything that could change or complicate them. And this, whatever this is, whatever we are, whatever this connection means in the larger picture of life, it's something I choose to keep gently, without forcing it, without questioning it too much, without turning it into something heavier than it needs to be, because at the end of the day, it's not about what this becomes, it's about what it already is, and what it is something rare, something quiet, something deeply real in a way that doesn't need to be proven to anyone else to exist. And maybe that's where everything finally settles, not in answers, not in outcomes, not in some perfect ending where everything suddenly makes sense, but in this quiet understanding that what we felt, what we still feel, was never meant to follow the usual path. It was never meant to become something easy to explain or easy to live. It was meant to exist exactly like this, soft, unspoken, a little incomplete, yet somehow whole in its own way, and I think I've made peace with that now, truly. Deeply, in a way I couldn't before, because earlier there was always this part of me that hoped for more, that wondered if maybe one day things would change, if maybe time would rearrange everything in a way that would make this possible, that would give us a chance to experience this connection without holding back, without thinking about consequences, without feeling like we have to constantly step back from something that feels so natural. But now I understand that not every feeling is meant to become a reality, not every connection is meant to turn into a shared life, and that doesn't make it any less real, it doesn't make it any less important, it just makes it different, and different doesn't mean less, it just means it exists in another form, one that's quieter, one that stays within you instead of around you, and you've become that for me. Something that lives within me in a way that doesn't disturb my world but quietly adds to it, something that I carry without effort, without resistance, like a memory that never fades even though it's still alive. And I think the most beautiful part of this is that despite everything, despite the distance, the silence, the boundaries, there's no bitterness in what I feel for you, there's no regret, there's no sense of loss in the way people usually describe it. Because how can I regret something that showed me a depth of emotion I didn't even know I was capable of? How can I see this as a loss when it gave me something so rare, something so genuine, something that didn't need to be loud or visible to change me? And yes, maybe there will always be a small part of me that wonders, what if, a quiet corner of my heart that imagines a different version of this story, one where timing was kinder, where life was simpler, where we didn't have to hold back. But that part of me no longer controls how I feel. It no longer creates restlessness or confusion, it just exists gently, like a passing thought that comes and goes without disturbing the peace I've found in accepting things as they are. And I think that's what growth looks like, not forgetting, not forcing yourself to stop feeling, but learning how to feel without losing yourself, learning how to carry something meaningful without letting it turn into something painful. and you've taught me that without even trying, without even knowing, just by being who you are, just by existing in my life in the way you did, and maybe that's enough. Maybe that's more than enough, because not everyone gets to experience something like this. Not everyone gets to feel a connection that stays even in silence, that remains steady even without constant presence, that feels real even when it's never fully expressed, and I don't take that lightly. I don't dismiss it as something small or insignificant. I recognize it for what it is. A rare kind of bond that doesn't need to be defined to be meaningful, that doesn't need to be completed to be complete in its own way. And as I sit here now, thinking about everything, I don't feel the urge to reach out. I don't feel the need to break this silence or change anything, because for the first time, I feel at peace with just knowing that somewhere, in this vast, complicated world, there's someone I feel this deeply connected to, and that's enough for my heart to feel full, even if that fullness comes with a quiet, unspoken understanding rather than a shared reality. And wherever you are, whatever you're doing, whatever direction your life is taking, I genuinely hope it brings you happiness. I hope you find moments that make you feel alive, people who make you feel understood, a life that feels right for you in every possible way, because caring about you was never about having you, it was about wanting the best for you. Even if that best exists completely separate from me, and maybe one day, we'll look back at this, at whatever this was, and we'll both understand it in our own ways. Maybe we'll smile at the thought of a connection that didn't need to be spoken to be real, that didn't need to be lived out to be meaningful, and maybe we won't even need to talk about it, because some things don't require closure. They just quietly settle into your soul and become a part of who you are, and you've become that part for me, something I'll carry forward without weight, without expectation, without regret, just with a quiet kind of gratitude that I got to feel something this real, even if it was never meant to be mine in the way I once imagined. And maybe that's the final truth of all of this, that some people come into your life not to stay in the way you expect, but to change you in the way you need, to show you something about yourself, about love, about connection, that you wouldn't have understood otherwise, and then they remain, not in your everyday life, but in your heart, in your thoughts, in the quiet spaces where only the most genuine things exist. And I think I'm finally okay with that. I think I'm finally at a place where I don't need more than this, where I don't need answers or outcomes or clarity beyond what I already feel, because what I feel is enough. It always was. I just needed time to understand it, and now that I do, I can let this exist exactly as it is, calm, unspoken, real, and complete in its own beautifully imperfect way.